if you have a right model, and then if you have data, if you don't have customers, it's nothing, right?
What types of constraints have you seen that have been the hardest in practice?
We are building the ecosystem to tackle many different layers of a problem. So we have the challenges in data and then also hardware. If you just go deep into the hardware, there are challenges in actuator and the vision sensor. So we are building ecosystem starting from the East Asia with like a very prominent companies and then professors and then scientists, and then we are tackling this problem together with those.
Hello and welcome to the Nebius for Startups podcast. My name is Anubhav Maheshwari and I lead venture partnerships at Nebius. This is a special series centered around the Nebius Robotics and Physical AI Summit and Awards Competition. This inaugural competition brought over 250 startup applications from over 60 countries around the world. In the series, we're excited to chat to award winners and finalists in the competition. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by KW, who is the Chief Business Officer of RLWRLD. RLWRLD was one of the award winners at the competition, and we're so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Would love to start with an introduction on yourself, background, as well as what's the story of RLWRLD?
Yeah, so my name is KW. I'm currently the Chief Business Officer of the company. And then a little bit about my background. I studied mechanical engineering in Seoul National University. And then also I studied business at the Stanford University. So I got the MBA there. And then after that, I spent 50% more of my career in the professional business area. So I was a managing director and a partner at the Boston Consulting Group. And also I did some investment banking and private equity in Hong Kong. But another just 50% of my career is like full of the startup experiences. So I just led one of the beauty platform called the Mimi Box. It was like funded by Y Combinator, and then I had a great experience building platform and building brands. And after then, I co-founded Twitch. It is like one of the agricultural trading platform, and then it is like a very unique, one of the very unique, the unicorn company in Korea. And then this time, now I'm building just the RLWRLD together with like great guys.
Amazing. Tell me more about how RLWRLD started. What's the thesis? What's the founding story?
So we have the 6 co-founders, and then also just together with like 6 very prominent professors, right, in Korea. So we spent more than like a year to just discuss how we just build this company together, right? The opportunities what we've seen is like especially in the LLM area, right? It's all about the GPU power and then just the great talent. But just when it comes to Robotics Foundation Model, you might just see much more just the complexity. It just comes from many different areas. The first one is like, you don't have that much data, right? To just build some Robotics Foundation Model, you need some real world data, right? From the real just the human labor. And then we saw that, especially if we just build some presence, especially from the East Asia, these East countries that has very skilled labor, and then also very good aspiration to just introduce the humanoid in their working places. And then also we just teamed up with like really just prominent professors, and then they are a best of the best in this AI field and the robotics field, right? And then also just we partnering with the major corporations, large corporations in both Japan and Korea. They are really just willing to just build the future together with us. So we just collected this kind of puzzles together, and then it took around 1 year, and then now it's been 1.5 years since we just developed our company.
Wow, congratulations on all the momentum. I know you've raised quite a bit of capital so far as well, and perhaps a new funding round coming together shortly.
You're right.
If you think about the key value proposition that you want to provide the end customers that RLWRLD will solve for, what are the pain points, or what's the value proposition that creates ROI for customers?
Yeah. Just before we just start the discussion, one thing I'd like to make it clear is like we are the Robotics Foundation Model company, and then we are currently just focusing on Dexterous and the 5-finger dexterous hand manipulation area. And then this is the area that we believe that might be the most challenging area in this robotics foundation model area. And then we are just tackling on this problem and tackling on these challenges by just having just working with like a real just industry partners, as I just explained, right? So that what you just believe is that building just maybe very good architecture and then very good robotics foundation model is like a very starting point. But at the end of the day, we strongly just believe we need some real world deployment, right? It should just maybe replace current human labor, and then it should just work, maybe it's a similar or just maybe a better productivity than the current maybe some human labor. So that we are just getting there, and then we are just trying pushing very hard.
Yeah,
to achieve that.
we've heard at Nebius that arms and fingers and dexterity is one of the most complex parts
That's
of
true.
robotics. So you've taken on a pretty significant challenge.
Yes.
Are you breaking down this problem into subcomponents? Could you walk us through what are some of the subcomponents that goes into a robotic hand being incredibly dexterous?
Yes. It all just start from the data, right? Just as I explained, you can just get some many different data, especially for the whole body movement, right? If you just look at the YouTube clip, there are just many different just videos you can just maybe teach the current model, right? How do you just move, right? And then if you just look at the current humanoid hardwares, they all just show the very good level of the just maybe movement, right? But when it just comes to this kind of the maybe dexterous hand manipulation, you definitely need some data from the real world situation. So what we just have, we are now just partnering with largest maybe the corporations in Japan and Korea in the manufacturing and then services area and then logistics area. And then we are getting the access to really the skilled labor there. And then we are just getting their real dexterous hands movement data, right? So we are just using this and then together with like maybe typical simulation data and then also teleoperation data. Just we are building various maybe the foundation model that can just accommodate this kind of many different data set. So this is like our starting point. And the second thing is like in terms of the model architecture, there are also just a lot of just challenges, right? Maybe achieving very good level of high level reasoning and then very precise manipulation is like very tough, right? So we are taking some multiple approach to just build our maybe proprietary just architecture. So we are building some very small model that is like focusing on dexterous manipulation. And at the same time, we are building some general model that is focusing on the high level reasoning. And then also just we are just playing and then also just working on very traditional way as well. So we are just trying many different areas that can just build some best model, right? And then last thing is like a commercialization, right? If you have a right model and then if you have data, if you don't have customers, it's nothing, right? So we intentionally started from the Japan and Korea because these two countries, they have very serious intention to just introduce humanoid in their working space because these two countries are aging very fast. And then birth rate is less than 10, less than 1 right now. So they need to just replace and they need to just fill the gap between the demand and the supply, right? So that they have a genuine interest to just adopt the humanoid. So we are working very closely with them to identify what kind of use case is like most powerful, the first use case to introduce humanoid. And then what are the maybe 3 to 5 year master plan, right? To build this kind of journey together. So we are becoming very good friend of them. And then basically they are just providing data to us. And then we are providing our technology. And then we are building robotics foundation model together. And then we are just enjoy economics together.
Right.
This is our approach.
It sounds like you've brought together a lot of the important ingredients that go into building a successful venture in this category.
Right.
You, of course, require capital, that you've embarked on that journey of raising capital.
Right.
You have to focus on team expertise. So it's a large founding team that comes, I I believe, from many different disciplines. You have academics that are supporting you. And then ultimately, the moat is also in the data, because this is a category where there's very limited existing public data sets,
Yes.
right? For the data that you receive, what are the methods for data capture? And do you have to think about data pipelines, data cleaning? What does it take to go from that, source data from a skilled worker in a logistics or services field to then actually being able to deploy it, on the dexterity hand?
Right. You know that there are many different level of data, right? Um, so within real world, we have the many different set of the talents inside our company. And then especially if I'm just looking at the business side of our company, we have around the 7 guys from very professional background. Like they just maybe had the experience in the Boston Consulting Group or McKinsey and Company. They had the expertise in it's different, just the domain operation. So they understand clearly what are the manufacturing process and then what are the operation process in hotel and airline and the logistics area. So the first step when we just comes to data, the first step we do is like we just getting into the company and we provide robotics transformation consultation service. What it is like once we just get in the industry, we just identify one maybe 1,000 different human tasks that can be just replaced by the humanoid. And then just maybe apply that and then match those kind of the tasks with like the labor cost and the labor hour. And then also just to match that with like the technological maybe maturity. Yeah, when the hardware and the sensor technology can just replace this kind of human labor. So this is like the first step. So we provide, this is like the your just master plan that you can just maybe deploy the humanoid in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and then year 5, right? So we start from this kind of the master plan first. Yeah. So they can just give you the very good just the fundamental. Then we are just looking at very skilled labor. And then also we'd like to just find some differences among and between the skilled labor and just the normal labor. And then there are many different layers of the data, right? So they have their own know-how, how to just approach these kind of the tasks. And then they'll maybe within the company, they also just have some certain process and a certain level of the manual that these kind of people just work, right? And then also those kind of the skilled labor, they have some different set of the unique, right? The know-how to just handle different just object and then to just maybe some use some tools, right? So we are just getting those kind of all data. And then we also just use maybe another just maybe traditional ways like a synthetic data and then teleoperation data. But just securing this kind of real world data from the very skilled labor is like our the core differentiation.
Can you give us a sense of what scale of data you're operating on?
Yeah, just we are working on, but then we will be just able to maybe publish our the first model in next March.
Wow.
And then we are going to talk about them more.
That's exciting.
At this time, right?
So you applied to the Nebius Robotics Award, and we're really curious to learn about, was there a particular milestone that you had earlier this year, or did you have some level of success where you thought it's going to be a great idea to apply to this awards competition?
Yeah. So we worked hard, really hard this year, and then we had an internal milestone. We actually just showcased our the first public demo, YouTube demo. So you might want to just check out our the YouTube channel, right? And then in October, right? And then we showcased our the demo in those kind of online setting, but in the several just offline settings. So we showcased our the Robotics Foundation model together with like humanoid, working on some demo in the KDDI AI Summit in Japan and SK AI Summit in Seoul, and then Coral, right? One of the largest maybe the conference in the humanoid spaces. So we showcased those, and then now just we are already just maybe working at the several large conglomerates in Japan and Korea. so that we just felt now it's like ready for us to just maybe go beyond maybe Japan and Korea and then build our presence in the global level. And then Nebius gave us a great opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Super cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you said you've been working incredibly hard. I can imagine it takes a lot to work on both the software and hardware layer simultaneously.
Yes.
In the process of development, what types of constraints have you seen that have been the hardest in practice? You know, is it latency? Is it the manipulation and the dexterity? Is it system reliability? Is it access to compute? Maybe it's something else.
You know, it's all about the deployment. Yeah, there are just many different areas of the challenges, but the key difference is between the LLM and then this kind of robotics foundation model space is like deployment should happen in the real just the robot, right? And then this makes a total different story, right? In many different areas, in collecting data by the teleoperation, and then also making sure that you are just working on the same tasks, and that you need to just create the same output, right, with the different hardware. But currently, from the same manufacturer, same brand, it's like a same model. But if you just maybe give them the same input, it produces totally different outcome. Yeah. So that is like one of the key difficulties. So
simulation doesn't always lead to
always
the
like
same
behavior in the real world. So that's why that we are working very closely with like many different just hardware manufacturers, and then even we are also just working with the parts manufacturers like a vision sensor and then actuators. Yeah, this is like the key component for the humanoid ecosystem. So even though we are the Robotics Foundation Model company, we are very closely working with those kind of hardware and then parts companies.
Yeah. And is the idea that the real-world Robotics Foundation models will then be adopted by other humanoid manufacturers or other humanoid components companies?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we hope. Yeah.
Do you want to stay within the software realm or also get into building hardware as well?
So when we just start our company, we actually co-developed the hardware together with like one of the very prominent Korean humanoid manufacturer called Robotics. We did that because we cannot just separate model development with like a hardware. So when the first approach was like maybe collaborating very closely with like a hardware player. And then we also just believe that we still need to deal. So at least for the next few months and then 1 or 2 years, we are just building very close relationship with maybe 2 to 3 the key hardware manufacturers. And then, but maybe at the end of the day, right, we need to just build a model that can just work on any different just embodiment. And then that's our just goal. So we are just working on that. Right.
So far, you've focused on the Korean market. The team is primarily based in Seoul. You were sharing with me earlier. Of course, the Japanese market is also very, very important.
Right.
How are you thinking about further international expansion? What regions or countries might be next on the roadmap and under what timeline?
Yes. Currently, around maybe 9% of the client relationship and the business is like happening in Japan and Korea. But at the same time, we are getting lots of just the inbound inquiry from the global manufacturers and then logistics players and service players. And then they actually just experienced several other humanoid players and then try to just do some POC on their real world spaces. But they just came to us because they found that when it comes to real deployment, right, you definitely need this kind of 5-finger dexterous manipulation is like a key. So there are just not many just the players at the current stage, and then we are one of the very uniquely positioned company. So we just strongly just feel that now is like maybe time to just maybe go beyond East Asia and then just discuss with like a global clients.
If you had to guess where the next region is, or maybe you're planning on it,
right?
Where would it be? Or what's your ideal next region to penetrate?
Yeah, we'd like to just to meet. Yeah, the location is not important. I think the aspiration to adopt a humanoid, right? they are just a real pain point, right? In securing some light talent and then deploying some light people. If they have some very deep pain point on it, we'd like to discuss with them.
Yeah, makes sense. In terms of the future roadmap as well, are there certain underlying shifts that you think will matter the most? It could be in compute, models, data, hardware, simulation. What do you think will really help accelerate this category?
Within our company, we have around 45 employees. But outside of our company, we have a very interesting corporate structure. So we are just working closely with like 6 professors, and then 6 professors in each lab. And then we are just directly accessing maybe the very prominent PhD and the master student in each of those lab. And then basically we are building the ecosystem to tackle many different layers of a problem, right? So we have the challenges in data and then also hardware. If you just go deep into the hardware, there are challenges in actuator and the vision sensor. So we are building ecosystem starting from the East Asia with like a very prominent companies and then professors and then scientists, and then we are tackling this problem together with those. Right.
It's interesting you alluded to, as you sort of double click in different areas, you uncover complexity, right, in more and more areas. As you think about like the stack that you're working on and pioneering, what are the areas that you think are evolving the fastest, just in general in this ecosystem that you are kind of a part of?
Yeah. What I'm just feeling is like the many large corporations, especially I'm just talking about the hardware area because we are feeling a real just a pain in the hardware area. But what I'm just seeing is like the so large corporations was not that serious about, especially if I just talk to East Asian large manufacturers, right? They were not that serious about the humanoid. They didn't just see that this will just come in 5 years. But now they are just getting understand. This could just create huge opportunity in 5 years time frame. So that the companies who have some great technology but didn't pay attention that much about the humanoid, now just they are getting in this space, right? So that they are just building very good ecosystem. So we just build that hardware area, also just to maybe might just show the great improvement going forward.
Yeah.
And then just working on the model space and the data, it's our job, right? We will do our best.
Could you finish the sentence for me? We will know we succeeded when.
All right. First milestone next March. We are gonna just maybe showcase the first Robotics Foundation model, and then ultimate goal, we need to just make a success in real world deployment with the real world partners.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, really glad to have KW here with me, Chief Business Officer at RLWRLD, company and team based primarily in Seoul in Korea, focus on the Korean and Japanese markets today, but as we discussed, rapidly wanting to expand globally. And they were the first place winners in the awards competition for the foundation models, robot brains, and runtime category. So congratulations, and really, really excited about our collaboration.
Thank you very much.